Damon Caldwell was 42 years old, and most mornings in Atlanta began for him before the sun had fully lifted over the rooftops. He liked the quiet hour, the one before traffic thickened on I-285, before emails started arriving, before the house remembered how to make noise. He would stand in the kitchen in a faded Morehouse sweatshirt, coffee warming beside the sink, packing Nadia's lunch with the same careful attention he gave to bridge plans, drainage maps, and every other structure people only noticed when something went wrong. Damon was an infrastructure engineer by trade, the kind of man cities depended on without ever learning his name. He understood load, pressure, stress points, the invisible parts that kept everything standing. At home, he had become that too. He paid the bills before they were late, fixed the loose cabinet hinge before Yvette complained about it, changed the air filters, remembered school forms, checked the tire pressure in her car, and listened patiently when she came home from corporate dinners smelling like expensive perfume and distance. He had never minded being quiet. Quiet was not weakness to Damon. Quiet was control. But somewhere inside his marriage, Yvette had begun to mistake his restraint for smallness. She saw the old pickup he drove, the work boots by the laundry room, the way he wore the same watch for years, and she built a version of him that was useful only when something needed repairing. The kitchen he had renovated with his own hands had marble counters now, soft pendant lighting, brass handles Yvette had chosen from a catalog and then forgotten the price of. Their wedding photo still hung in the hallway near the stairs, both of them younger, smiling like people who had not yet learned how silence could change shape inside a house. That Friday night, rain tapped against the windows in hard silver lines. Damon came in through the garage just after 8:40, his jacket damp at the shoulders, a folder of work papers under one arm. The house smelled faintly of white wine and Yvette's vanilla perfume. The living room lights were low. A half-empty glass sat on the coffee table. At first, he thought she had gone upstairs. Then he saw the suitcase by the front door. Not packed for travel. Open. Empty. Waiting. Something felt wrong. Yvette stood near the kitchen island in a champagne-colored robe, her phone face down beside her hand. She did not ask about his day. She did not mention dinner. Her eyes moved over him once, from his damp shoes to his work shirt, and stopped there like she had already made peace with whatever she was about to say. On the island was a manila envelope. Clean. Crisp. Too deliberate to be ordinary. Damon set his folder down slowly. He noticed the details first, because that was how his mind survived difficult rooms. The envelope had a law office return address. The kitchen clock read 8:43. The wine glass had lipstick on the rim. There was a second set of car keys beside Yvette's purse, keys he had never seen before, attached to a black leather fob with a silver emblem. Then he heard movement from the living room. A man shifted on the sofa, just enough for Damon to see polished shoes, crossed ankles, a dark tailored pant leg. Preston Vale. Damon knew his face from Yvette's company photos, from the charity event pictures where Preston always seemed to stand too close, smiling with the easy confidence of a man who entered rooms expecting people to move. Damon looked at him once, then back at the envelope. He stayed silent. Yvette slid it across the marble. "I had these drawn up," she said. Her voice was calm, almost bored, as if she were canceling a subscription. Damon opened the envelope. Divorce papers. Property language. Temporary possession. Account separation. Words that reduced 12 years of marriage to clauses and signatures. He read the first page, then the second. His coffee from that morning still sat in his travel mug near the sink, untouched and cold. The detail did not match. She was too ready. This was not a fight that had become a decision. This was a decision that had been waiting for a night with rain, wine, and another man in his living room. Before we go deeper into what Damon discovered that night, tell us where you're watching from and do not forget to subscribe, because what happened next changed everything. Damon did not raise his voice. He did not ask Preston to leave. He did not give Yvette the scene she seemed prepared to watch. He simply turned the page and saw a highlighted paragraph claiming the house should remain with her because she had maintained the primary standard of living. His thumb stopped on that line. Behind him, the washing machine hummed in the laundry room, steady and indifferent. Yvette crossed her arms. "You can take what fits in 2 bags," she said. "Everything else was never really yours." Preston gave a soft laugh from the couch. Damon looked toward the hallway, at the wedding photo under the warm light, then down at the papers again. That was when he noticed the attachment clipped to the back, a bank statement, one he had not printed, showing a transfer he had never authorized, to an account with a name he had never seen before. Damon did not leave the kitchen right away. He stood with the divorce papers open beneath his hand, listening to the rain strike the back windows and the low hum of the refrigerator behind him. Yvette had gone quiet after telling him to take 2 bags. Preston remained in the living room, close enough for Damon to hear the small shift of leather when he moved, close enough for the house to feel different. Damon looked down at the bank statement clipped to the back of the papers. The transfer amount was not large enough to panic over by itself, but that was exactly what made it wrong. $12,000, moved in a clean, rounded figure, 3 weeks earlier. The account name meant nothing to him. Not a vendor. Not a contractor. Not Nadia's school. Not the emergency fund. He had managed their household finances for 12 years, not because Yvette could not, but because he knew numbers the way other people knew weather. He knew when a bill was higher than usual. He knew when a payment date shifted. He knew the rhythm of their life in debits, deposits, due dates, and quiet sacrifices. That transfer did not belong to the rhythm. He closed the folder gently. Years earlier, when they bought the house in Cascade Heights, it had not looked like the kind of place Yvette posted online now. The porch boards had sagged. The guest bathroom had a leak behind the wall. The kitchen cabinets were swollen from old water damage, and the backyard looked like a forgotten lot. Damon remembered standing there with Yvette on the first afternoon, both of them younger, both of them holding take-out coffee, while sunlight fell through dusty windows. She had walked room to room with bright eyes, naming what the house could become. Damon had listened, measured the walls with his eyes, and already begun calculating what he could fix himself. He spent weekends under sinks, evenings sanding cabinet doors, summer nights in the backyard laying stone pavers by work light while mosquitoes gathered around his ankles. He learned which floorboards creaked, which outlet needed rewiring, how the rainwater moved along the left side of the driveway. Little by little, the tired house became the Caldwell home. Yvette chose colors. Damon made them real. She hosted people under pendant lights he installed after midnight. She accepted compliments on marble counters he had saved for, measured, and negotiated. He never corrected anyone when they praised her taste. It had been enough, then, to see her smile. It had also been Damon who held the quieter pieces together. When Yvette's career began climbing, he adjusted his schedule without making it sound like a sacrifice. He made sure Nadia's permission slips were signed, her braids were neat for picture day, her science project had fresh batteries, her favorite cereal was in the pantry. He drove to school meetings after long days reviewing stormwater plans and bridge inspections. He cooked when Yvette was late, covered when she forgot, and told Nadia her mother was working hard because he wanted his daughter to admire ambition without feeling abandoned by it. Somewhere along the way, the things he did became invisible because he did them so consistently. Reliability turned into background noise. Patience turned into something people assumed would always be there. Damon could see that now, standing in the kitchen he had built, holding papers that described him like a temporary occupant. Yvette's voice broke the silence. "I do not want this to become ugly." Damon looked at her. The sentence landed strangely. He could hear the shape of rehearsal in it, the careful tone of someone repeating words that had been prepared before the moment arrived. He glanced toward Preston's polished shoes, then back to the envelope. He did not answer immediately. His eyes moved to the family calendar on the wall. Nadia's parent-teacher conference was circled for Thursday. A dental appointment was written in Damon's handwriting. Yvette's corporate dinner from 2 nights earlier had been added in a different pen. That was the first detail that pulled at him. 2 nights earlier, she had said the dinner ran late because of a visiting executive from Chicago. Damon remembered warming her plate at 10:30, then throwing it away untouched at midnight. He remembered the unfamiliar cologne in the hallway when she came in. He remembered her purse, heavier than usual, placed on the stairs instead of the entry table. Small things. Not proof. Not yet. But stress marks never appeared all at once. They began as hairline cracks. Damon slid the statement back into the folder and picked up the pen Yvette had placed beside it. He did not sign. He simply turned it once between his fingers, feeling the cheap plastic bend slightly under his thumb. Then he noticed something else on the bottom corner of the bank statement, almost hidden by the paperclip. A memo line. 2 words, typed cleanly beside the transfer number. Consultation retainer. Damon did not sleep in the house that night. He packed carefully, because even leaving required order. 2 pairs of jeans, 3 shirts, work boots, his laptop, Nadia's framed kindergarten photo from his desk, and the small leather notebook where he kept measurements for repairs he had not finished yet. Yvette watched from the doorway of the bedroom with her arms folded, saying nothing unless he reached for something she had decided belonged to the house. The phrase itself stayed with him. The house. Not their house. Not home. Just the house, as if 12 years could be stripped down to square footage and title language. By 11:17, Damon carried the 2 bags through the front hallway. Rainwater shone on the porch steps like black glass. Preston had moved near the entry table, close enough to be seen, not close enough to say anything useful. Damon noticed his watch first, bright under the ceiling light, the kind men wore when they wanted a room to understand them before they spoke. Preston smiled slightly, and Damon understood that smile. It was not victory. It was performance. Some men needed an audience to feel tall. Damon stepped outside without giving him one. The cold rain hit his face, ran down the back of his neck, soaked into the collar of his jacket. He put the bags into the back of his old pickup and stood for a moment beside the open door. Through the front window, he could see Yvette moving across the living room, collecting the wine glass from the table. She looked calm from that distance, almost relieved. Damon had seen that kind of calm before in buildings right before a foundation problem became visible upstairs. The pressure had been there for months. Maybe longer. He drove to an extended-stay hotel off Peachtree Industrial Boulevard because it was close enough to Nadia's school and far enough from the house that he would not be tempted to circle the block like a man hoping to be invited back into his own life. The lobby smelled like lemon cleaner and old carpet. A vending machine buzzed near the ice room. The clerk gave him a key card without looking up for more than a second. In the room, Damon set his bags on the floor, hung his wet jacket over the chair, and sat at the small desk beneath a lamp that flickered once before settling. The silence was different there. Not peaceful. Temporary. He opened his laptop, but he did not call anyone yet. He needed to understand the shape of what had happened before he moved. That was how he had always worked. Measure the damage. Identify the stress points. Do not confuse emotion with evidence. The phrase on the bank statement returned first. Consultation retainer. He typed it into a blank document, then added the date, the amount, and the account name he did not recognize. Beneath that, he wrote down what he remembered from the past 3 months. The late corporate dinners. The new perfume. The way Yvette had begun ending calls the moment he entered a room. The changed passcode on her phone. The sudden interest in private lounges in Buckhead. The jokes she made in front of her executive friends, small enough to sound harmless, sharp enough to leave a mark. He remembered one dinner in particular at a rooftop restaurant downtown, city lights glowing behind tall windows, Yvette sitting between 2 women from her new circle while Damon answered a question about infrastructure funding. He had explained it plainly, maybe too plainly. One of the women nodded with interest, but Yvette laughed and touched his sleeve. Damon likes practical things, she had said. He is more of a behind-the-scenes kind of guy. Everyone smiled. Damon had smiled too. But on the drive home, she had looked out the passenger window the entire time, her reflection floating over the dark glass like someone already imagining another life. That was where the shame had begun to show clearly. Not in a single insult, but in the way she introduced him less, corrected him more, and seemed embarrassed by every ordinary thing he had once believed made them stable. His pickup. His work shirts. His quiet weekends fixing what broke. His preference for saving instead of showing. The next morning, Damon woke before sunrise out of habit. For one confused second, he reached toward the side of the bed where Yvette should have been. His hand touched a cold hotel sheet. He sat up slowly. Outside, traffic moved in wet lines beneath the orange parking lot lights. His phone buzzed on the desk. A message from Yvette. Nadia does not need to know details yet. Please do not make this harder than it has to be. Damon read it twice. The wording was neat, controlled, almost professional. Then another message arrived, not from Yvette. It was from Leon Price, a friend Damon had known since college and trusted because Leon never sent anything without a reason. The text held only one sentence. You need to see who she was with last Tuesday. Damon did not open Leon's message right away. He sat at the small hotel desk with the phone in his hand, watching the screen dim, then brighten again when another notification came through. The room heater clicked softly under the window. Outside, a delivery truck backed into the alley with 3 short beeps, ordinary sounds moving through an ordinary morning while Damon's life sat in pieces on the floor beside 2 half-packed bags. Leon was not careless. He was not dramatic. If he said Damon needed to see something, then something had already crossed a line. Damon placed the phone face down and closed his eyes for 1 second, not to avoid it, but to hold himself still before memory started filling in the gaps. Last Tuesday had been one of Yvette's Buckhead nights. She had called it a professional mixer, the kind of evening where everyone wore name tags for the first 20 minutes and pretended the real business did not begin until the drinks arrived. Damon remembered her standing in front of the bedroom mirror, fastening a gold bracelet he had bought her 7 anniversaries ago. She had changed dresses twice, not because either dress looked wrong, but because she was trying to become the kind of woman that particular room would reward. He had sat on the edge of the bed tying his work boots, still in the navy shirt he had worn to a stormwater review meeting across town. You are not coming like that, she had said, not cruelly enough to start an argument, but not gently enough to hide what she meant. Damon had looked down at himself, then back at her reflection. I thought spouses were invited. Yvette had smiled without turning around. They are. I just think you would be bored. He had accepted that answer because acceptance was easier than asking why her voice carried relief. That was how it had been happening for months. Not one obvious rejection. A series of small removals. A charity breakfast where she forgot to mention his name until someone asked. A company dinner where she introduced him only as Damon, not my husband. A rooftop birthday gathering where she laughed too quickly when a man joked that engineers were useful because somebody had to keep the lights on. Damon remembered Preston Vale from that night most clearly, because Preston had looked at him with the practiced warmth of someone performing respect. Tall, polished, wearing a navy suit that fit too tightly across the shoulders, Preston had shaken Damon's hand and held it half a second too long. So you are the practical one, Preston had said. Yvette laughed before Damon answered. That is Damon, she said. He keeps things grounded. It had sounded like praise if someone was not listening closely. Damon had listened closely. Preston had smiled at Yvette then, not at Damon. Every ambitious woman needs someone to handle the simple things, he said. Damon had felt the sentence land, clean and quiet, like a scratch across glass. He had not corrected it. He had simply watched Yvette's face. She did not defend him. She looked down into her glass, smiling as if the comment belonged to the room and not to her marriage. That was the night Damon first understood the new circle had taught her a different language. In that language, patience sounded like weakness. Modesty sounded like failure. A paid-off truck sounded like embarrassment. A man who came home every night, cooked dinner, helped his daughter with fractions, and repaired what broke was not dependable. He was small. By sunrise in the hotel room, the memory had sharpened enough to hurt, but Damon still did not let it move his hands too fast. He opened his laptop and created a new folder with the date. Then he picked up his phone and tapped Leon's message. A photograph loaded slowly over the weak hotel wireless connection, line by line. First came a polished bar top. Then a low amber light. Then Yvette's bracelet, the anniversary bracelet, bright against a white cocktail napkin. Damon leaned closer. The rest of the image appeared, and his breathing changed before his face did. Preston Vale was sitting beside her in a private lounge booth, close enough that his shoulder touched hers, while Yvette looked at him with a smile Damon had not seen directed at him in years. On the table between them was a receipt, partly visible under her hand, and at the bottom, in black print, was the same account name from the transfer. Damon kept the photograph open on his screen until the details stopped feeling like a shock and started becoming information. The private lounge booth. The amber lighting. Yvette's anniversary bracelet. Preston's shoulder pressed close enough to make the room around them feel unnecessary. And the receipt. That was the part Damon returned to again and again. Not her smile, though it cut deeper than he expected. Not Preston's hand resting near hers, though it confirmed what months of distance had already been saying. The receipt mattered because it connected emotion to paper. Paper could be dated. Paper could be matched. Paper could be explained or fail to be explained. Damon enlarged the image carefully, not altering it, only looking closer. The account name at the bottom was partially blocked, but enough letters were visible to make his stomach tighten. Vale Strategic Consulting. The same wording pattern as the transfer account. Consultation retainer. He sat back in the hotel chair, the cheap cushion sighing under his weight, and stared at the wall above the desk. A framed print of the Atlanta skyline hung slightly crooked. He noticed that too. His mind, even now, searched for structure. Leon called 2 minutes later. Damon let it ring once, twice, then answered. "Where did you get this?" Damon asked. His voice sounded calm to his own ears, flatter than he felt. Leon exhaled on the other end. "I was there with a client. Saw them by accident. I almost did not send it." Damon looked at the image again. "When?" "Tuesday. Around 9. Damon closed his eyes for a moment. Tuesday at 9, Yvette had texted him that the mixer was running long because a visiting executive wanted to discuss a sponsorship package. Damon had replied, "Be safe." He remembered standing in the kitchen afterward, packing Nadia's lunch for the next morning, placing grapes in a small container because she hated when they touched her sandwich. "Was it just dinner?" Damon asked. Leon did not answer quickly. That pause told Damon enough without giving him anything he could not safely use. "They looked comfortable," Leon said finally. Damon nodded, though Leon could not see it. Comfortable. That word did more damage than something louder would have. Comfortable meant practice. Familiarity. No fear of being seen. No awkwardness. No mistake. "Did she see you?" Damon asked. "No. I kept walking. I did not want to make a scene." "Good." Damon meant it. A scene would have given Yvette time to rewrite the room before Damon understood it. After the call ended, he saved the photograph in the folder with the bank statement notes. He wrote down the time Leon gave him. He added Yvette's text message from Tuesday, then took a screenshot of his own phone so the timestamp stayed clear. He did not feel clever doing it. He felt tired. The kind of tired that sits behind the eyes after a person realizes the past has been quietly rearranging itself without permission. The anniversary bracelet in the photo brought back another memory. 7 years earlier, Damon had bought it after finishing a difficult project that kept an underpass from flooding every time Atlanta got heavy rain. The bonus had not been huge, but it had been enough. He remembered Yvette opening the box at a restaurant in Midtown, laughing softly, touching the gold like it was proof of being loved. Back then, she had leaned across the table and said, "You always remember what matters." In the photo, that same bracelet rested beside a receipt tied to Preston Vale. Something in Damon went very still. Not empty. Not broken. Still. He understood now that the divorce papers were not the beginning of anything. They were the visible part of something that had been built behind walls. He looked around the hotel room, at the 2 bags on the floor, the damp jacket over the chair, the laptop glowing in the half-light. Yvette had expected him to feel displaced. Maybe he was. But being displaced was not the same as being powerless. He opened a spreadsheet and began listing everything in order. Dates. Amounts. Names. Messages. Receipts. Observations. Not accusations. Not emotions. Facts. At 6:42 that morning, another message arrived from Leon. One more thing. The man paid with a card under the same company name. Damon looked at the words for a long time. Then a second image came through, clearer than the first. This one showed the full receipt, and beneath the total, printed in plain black letters, was a billing address Damon recognized. It was not a restaurant. It was not Preston's office. It was a suite number in the same building where Yvette had claimed her new executive mentorship program met every Thursday night. Yvette had not just handed Damon divorce papers. She had handed him a version of the marriage where every page had already been arranged to make him look smaller than he was. By the following afternoon, Damon understood that clearly. He sat in the hotel room with the curtains half open, gray daylight spread across the desk, the divorce packet laid out in careful rows beside his laptop. He had read every paragraph twice. Not quickly. Not emotionally. The way he read inspection reports after storms, looking for the one phrase that told him where the structure had failed. The papers requested that Yvette remain in the house pending final settlement. They described Damon as having limited financial contribution based on his visible salary from city infrastructure contracts. They framed his role with Nadia as supportive but secondary, as if school mornings, homework, parent meetings, dentist appointments, late-night fevers, and every lunch packed before sunrise could be reduced to a footnote. The language was polite. That made it worse. Polite words could still erase a man. Damon placed a yellow sticky note beside each section that did not match reality. House improvements. Joint account transfers. Custody language. Personal property. Financial disclosures. He did not write angry comments. He wrote questions. Who prepared this? When did she provide records? What documents were omitted? Why was the consultation retainer paid from a joint account? The last question sat at the center of everything. At 3:18, his phone buzzed with a message from Yvette. I hope you are taking time to process. We should keep this respectful, especially for Nadia. Damon read it while sitting perfectly still. Respectful. The word felt clean on the screen, too clean for a night when another man had sat in Damon's living room while his wife told him to pack 2 bags. He typed nothing back. Across the desk, the second receipt from Leon showed the suite number again. Damon searched the address only enough to confirm what the building was, a polished office tower in Buckhead with valet parking, glass elevators, and lease rates designed for people who wanted success to be visible before a meeting began. The directory listed several companies. One name made Damon stop. Vale Strategic Consulting, Suite 1712. Another name sat 2 lines below it. Harrow and Mills Family Law, Suite 1708. Damon leaned back slowly. The two offices were on the same floor. 4 doors apart, maybe 5. The detail did not prove everything, but it changed the shape of what he was looking at. Yvette had not found a lawyer in some distant, neutral way. She had been orbiting the same floor as Preston's company, paying money connected to his business name, then presenting Damon with papers drafted before he had even known there was a war. He stood and walked to the small sink, ran cold water over his hands, and looked at his reflection in the mirror above it. The man staring back looked tired, unshaven, still wearing the same dark sweater from the night before. But his eyes were steady. He thought of Nadia's backpack by the side door at home, the purple one with the broken zipper he had meant to fix that weekend. He thought of her asking last month why Mom was always on her phone now. He had told her adults had busy seasons. He hated that answer now. Not because it was false, but because it was incomplete. That evening, Yvette called. Damon let it ring until the last second, then answered. Her voice came through controlled and soft, the voice she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. Damon, I need to know when you are coming for the rest of your things. He looked at the papers on the desk. I have what I need for now. A pause followed. In that pause, he could hear traffic behind her, a faint elevator chime, and then a man's voice somewhere close by saying something Damon could not make out. Yvette covered the phone too late. The sound muffled. Then she returned. This does not have to be difficult. Damon looked again at the sweet number on the receipt. No, he said quietly. It does not. After the call ended, he opened the divorce packet one more time. Near the back, tucked behind the proposed property division, was a preliminary financial disclosure form. He had missed one line before because the copy was faint. Under outside consulting expenses, Yvette had listed a payment dated 3 weeks earlier. $12,000. Damon compared it to the bank statement, then to the receipt from Leon, then to the office directory glowing on his screen. Same date. Same amount. Same connected name. For the first time since he left the house, Damon reached for his contacts and scrolled to Marion Brooks, the only attorney he trusted enough to call before he fully understood the fire he was standing in. Damon called Marion Brooks, but he did not ask her to rescue him. That was not how he thought. Rescue was for people without options, and Damon had learned long ago that options usually existed if a man could stay calm long enough to see them. Marion answered on the third ring, her voice low and alert, the way it always sounded when she knew the call mattered before anyone explained why. Damon told her only what he could prove. Divorce papers. Joint account transfer. Consultation retainer. Suite numbers. The receipt Leon had sent. He did not call Yvette cruel. He did not call Preston anything at all. He described the facts, and when he finished, Marion was quiet for several seconds. Do not sign anything else, she said. Do not argue with her. Do not threaten. Do not try to make her admit anything. If you need belongings from the house, go in daylight, keep your phone on you, and take only what is yours. Damon looked at the 2 bags on the hotel floor. She told me 2 bags. Marion's voice sharpened just slightly. Then take the 2 bags and leave the rest for now. People reveal more when they believe they have already won. The next morning, Damon drove back to Cascade Heights under a pale sky washed clean by rain. The neighborhood looked the same in the daylight, which somehow made it worse. Sprinklers ticked over trimmed lawns. A jogger lifted one hand as he passed. Someone's dog barked behind a wooden fence. Damon turned into the driveway he had sealed himself 2 summers earlier, the old pickup rolling over a crack he had been meaning to patch. The house stood quiet, front porch still damp, brass numbers shining beside the door. For a moment, he sat with both hands on the steering wheel and looked at the place he had turned from a neglected structure into a home. He remembered replacing the porch light because Yvette said the old one made the entry look cheap. He remembered carrying Nadia through that front door when she was 5 and asleep against his shoulder after a 4th of July cookout. He remembered Yvette laughing in the kitchen when paint got on his cheek during the renovation. Memory could be cruel that way. It could keep the good parts lit even after the room had gone cold. Yvette opened the door before he knocked. She was dressed for work in a cream blouse and tailored pants, her hair smooth, her earrings small and expensive. She looked past him toward the truck, then back at his face. "I have a meeting in 40 minutes, she said. No good morning. No question about where he had slept. Damon nodded. "I will be quick." Inside, the house smelled different. Not new, exactly, but rearranged. A cologne he did not wear lingered near the hallway. On the entry table, his keys were gone from the ceramic bowl. His work boots, usually beside the laundry room, had been moved into a plastic bin. Yvette had already started sorting him out of the house in categories. Useful. Not useful. His. Hers. Gone. Preston was in the kitchen, leaning against the marble island with a mug in his hand. Damon noticed the mug first because it was the blue one Nadia had painted at a school fundraiser, the one with crooked yellow stars around the rim. Damon had always used it on Saturday mornings. Preston lifted it casually, as if objects meant nothing unless he was holding them. "Morning," Preston said, smooth and easy. Damon did not answer him. He walked past the kitchen and up the stairs. The hallway felt narrower than it ever had. In the bedroom, the closet door stood open. Yvette had placed an empty suitcase on the bed beside two black trash bags. The message was clear enough. Not luggage for a husband. Containers for removal. Damon folded his clothes with deliberate care, choosing work shirts, socks, a winter coat, the framed photo of Nadia from his nightstand, and the Bible his mother had given him when he bought the house. He left the anniversary gifts. Left the cuff links. Left the watch Yvette had once said made him look more executive. None of those things felt worth carrying. From downstairs, Preston's voice drifted up, not loud, but placed carefully enough to be heard. "Some men just are not built for the next level." Damon stopped with one hand on the suitcase zipper. He looked toward the bedroom window, where morning light fell across the floorboards he had refinished on his knees. He felt anger rise, clean and hot, then settle into something heavier and more useful. He zipped the suitcase. When he came downstairs, Yvette stood by the door with her arms crossed. Preston watched from the kitchen, still holding Nadia's mug. Damon carried the suitcase in one hand and the trash bags in the other. At the threshold, Yvette said, "Please do not make this harder than it has to be." Damon looked at her, then at the wedding photo still hanging in the hallway behind her. "I am not the one who made it hard," he said quietly. Outside, he loaded the bags into the truck. Just before he closed the tailgate, his phone buzzed. A message from Marion Brooks appeared on the screen. "I pulled the preliminary filing. There is a clause you need to see before she files it with the court." Damon did not open Marion's message in the driveway. He placed the phone face down on the passenger seat, closed the tailgate, and drove away from the house at the same steady speed he used every morning when Nadia was in the back seat with a backpack and a half-finished breakfast bar. The neighborhood slid past his windows in clean, expensive silence. Brick mailboxes. Trimmed hedges. Porch flags moving in the damp breeze. Nothing about the street suggested that a man could spend 12 years building a life in one place and be reduced to a visitor before lunch. At the red light on Cascade Road, he finally picked up the phone. Marion had sent a photo of a marked paragraph from the preliminary filing. Damon read it once, then again. Yvette's attorney intended to argue that Damon had intentionally minimized his income and professional opportunities during the marriage, limiting the household standard of living while benefiting from Yvette's upward mobility. The language was careful, but Damon understood the accusation beneath it. They were going to describe his restraint as failure. They were going to call his choices weakness. They were going to take the quiet life he had built and turn it into evidence against him. The light changed. A horn sounded behind him, short and impatient. Damon set the phone down and drove. He did not call Marion until he reached the extended stay hotel. The room looked smaller in daylight with the suitcase open on the bed and the two black bags slumped against the wall. His work boots left faint damp marks near the door. The lamp buzzed softly. Across the parking lot, a man in a reflective vest carried a ladder from one maintenance truck to another. Ordinary people kept working. That helped Damon breathe. Marion answered immediately. "Did you read it?" "Yes. They are trying to frame you as dependent and underperforming," she said. "If she files it that way, she is not just asking for the house. She is trying to control the story before the facts arrive." Damon looked at the crooked skyline print above the desk. "Let her." Marion went quiet. "Damon. Let her believe that is the story." He heard his own voice, calm and low. "For now." He did not say more. Not yet. There were things about his finances Yvette had never asked about because she had stopped being curious about him long before she left. There were companies where his name did not sit on the front door but his signature still mattered. There were properties held cleanly and legally, built from years of patience, separate agreements, and decisions made before Yvette ever decided his old truck embarrassed her. Damon had never hidden them to deceive her. He had simply stopped explaining parts of himself to someone who only listened for what she could measure in appearances. Marion did not press him over the phone. She only said, "Then we document everything. No speeches. No reactions. Let them overstate their position." Over the next 2 weeks, Damon became exactly what Yvette expected him to be on the surface. Quiet. Displaced. Manageable. He moved from the hotel into a modest one-bedroom apartment near Chambly, close enough to Nadia's school that he could still make morning drop-off when it was his turn. The building had beige hallways, thin walls, and a laundry room that took quarters. His neighbors were nurses, graduate students, airport workers, and divorced fathers who carried groceries upstairs with the tired focus of men rebuilding without applause. Damon bought a second-hand dining table from a man in Decatur, fixed one uneven leg with a washer and a wood shim, and placed Nadia's framed photo in the center of the room before he unpacked anything else. Yvette heard about the apartment through Nadia, then confirmed it with a message that arrived one evening while Damon was washing a pan in the small kitchen sink. "I am glad you found something within your range." He dried his hands before answering. "I did." That was all. No defense. No explanation. No invitation for her to understand more than she was ready to see. Later that night, after the apartment was quiet and the traffic outside softened to a low distant hiss, Damon opened his laptop at the second-hand table. Marion's name appeared in one window. A secured document folder appeared in another. One by one, he reviewed the files she had requested: tax records, property schedules, operating agreements, investment statements, engineering contracts, and ownership documents connected to Caldwell Infrastructure Group. He did not smile when the numbers filled the screen. He did not celebrate. He simply checked each line for accuracy, the same way he inspected bridges after heavy rain. At 11:36, Yvette posted a photo online from the marble kitchen, Preston's hand visible near a champagne glass, the caption polished and bright enough to fool anyone who did not know where to look. Damon stared at it for only a second before closing the app. Then Marion sent one more document. The subject line was short. "This is why she cannot afford to underestimate you." Damon opened Marion's document that night, but he did not let the numbers become the center of him. The file confirmed what he already knew and what Yvette had never cared enough to understand: his life had not been small, only quiet. Still, after an hour of reviewing ownership schedules and legal notes, he closed the laptop and sat in the dim apartment with the hum of the refrigerator behind him and Nadia's photo on the second-hand table. Money could answer accusations. It could correct a false story in court. It could bring the truth into a room where people had been too comfortable lying. But it could not make the apartment feel less empty at midnight. It could not give him back the version of his marriage he had believed in. Over the next several days, Damon kept moving. He took Nadia to school when the schedule allowed. He answered her questions gently, never giving her more than a child should carry. He cooked simple dinners in the small kitchen, learned which burner ran too hot, fixed the loose towel rack in the bathroom, and put felt pads under the table legs so they would not scrape the floor. He did not decorate much. A lamp. 2 bookshelves. A framed photo. A calendar on the wall. Stability did not always look impressive. Sometimes it looked like groceries in the refrigerator and a father who showed up on time. On Saturday morning, Damon drove to a community center near Decatur for a small scholarship event he had almost canceled. The program supported black students interested in engineering, construction management, and urban planning, fields Damon understood not just as careers but as ways of making a city safer for people who never got invited to planning meetings. He arrived early in his old pickup, wearing a navy blazer over a white shirt, carrying a box of printed materials and a check sealed in a plain envelope. The building smelled like coffee, floor polish, and folding chairs pulled from storage. A banner hung slightly crooked near the stage. Volunteers moved around with clipboards. Someone was trying to connect a microphone that kept sending a dull crackle through the speakers. Damon set down his box and watched for 30 seconds. The young man near the sound table looked embarrassed, pressing buttons without understanding what was wrong. Damon crossed the room quietly. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. The young man stepped aside with visible relief. Damon checked the cable first, then the receiver, then the power strip hidden behind the table. The problem was not complicated. A loose connection. It rarely was, if someone stayed calm long enough to trace the line. He fixed it, tapped the microphone once, and the room filled with a clean, steady sound. A woman behind him laughed softly. "You always fix things before people notice they are broken." Damon turned. Simone Ellis stood a few feet away holding a folder against her chest. She wore a forest green dress under a tan coat, simple gold earrings, and an expression that felt awake in a way Damon had not realized he missed being seen by. Not impressed. Not measuring. Just present. "Only when the room needs it," he said. Simone smiled. "Then this room is lucky." Her name tag read Simone Ellis, Education Equity Fund. Damon had seen her name on donor emails, always attached to clear writing and practical ideas. In person, she carried herself with the calm of someone who did not need a loud entrance to be taken seriously. They spoke for only a few minutes before the event began. She asked what kind of work he did, and when he gave the simple answer, infrastructure engineering, she did not drift away or reduce it to something ordinary. She asked about stormwater design, about neighborhoods that flooded after heavy rain, about why certain communities waited years for repairs others received in months. Damon found himself answering fully, not performing, not shrinking, not waiting for someone to make a joke about him being practical. When the students arrived, Simone moved through the room with easy warmth, kneeling to speak to a nervous 10th grader, adjusting a name tag for a boy whose hands shook, laughing with a mother who had come straight from an overnight shift. Damon noticed those things. He noticed because kindness, when it was real, did not need witnesses. After his short remarks on stage, he returned to the back of the room. Simone stood beside him, listening as a student described wanting to design bridges one day. "People think bridges are about getting cars across water," Damon said to the student. "But really, they are about whether people can get to work, to school, to hospitals, to each other. Build with that in mind." The student nodded like the sentence had given him something to hold. Simone glanced at Damon, and for the first time in weeks, he did not feel like a man being studied for weakness. He felt like a man being understood. Later, as the event ended and volunteers folded chairs, Damon reached for his coat and saw a message from Yvette on his phone. "We need to discuss Nadia's schedule. Also, Preston thinks it would be best if exchanges happen at the house for now." Damon looked at the screen, then across the room where Simone was helping the young man coil the microphone cable correctly. Something in the contrast settled over him with quiet force. One woman had learned to see him as an inconvenience. Another had just watched him fix a microphone and treated it like evidence of character. Damon put the phone away without answering yet. Then Simone walked over with a paper cup of coffee and said, "You look like someone who has carried more than boxes today." Damon accepted the cup, and before he could respond, his phone buzzed again, this time with a calendar invitation from Yvette's attorney for a preliminary settlement meeting at Harrow and Mills, Suite 1708. Damon did not accept the calendar invitation right away. He sat in the community center parking lot with Simone's coffee cooling in the cup holder and the message from Harrow and Mills glowing on his phone. Suite 1708. The same floor as Preston Vale's office. The same building tied to the receipt, the retainer, and the version of the truth Yvette was preparing to present as fact. He could have felt cornered. Instead, he felt the pattern becoming clearer. People who were confident in the truth did not need to arrange every hallway before the meeting began. He forwarded the invitation to Marion, then drove back to the apartment with the radio off, passing strip malls, gas stations, apartment complexes, and office towers reflecting a pale afternoon sun. By the time he reached Chambly, Yvette had posted again. Damon saw it only because Nadia's school group chat pushed her name to the top of his notifications, and there it was beside a polished photo from the kitchen he had built. Champagne on the marble island. Fresh flowers in the sink alcove. Preston's watch visible near the edge of the frame. The caption read, "New beginnings require courage." Damon looked at the picture long enough to notice what she had not meant to show. The cabinet door beneath the island sat slightly open because the hinge had loosened weeks ago. He had planned to fix it that Saturday before the divorce papers arrived. Preston's watch was turned toward the camera at an unnatural angle, too deliberate to be accidental. Behind the champagne bottle, barely visible in the reflection of the oven door, was a delivery box from a rental furniture company. Damon closed the app. He did not need to stare at someone else's performance to understand it. Over the next few days, Yvette's new life became louder from a distance. Nadia mentioned a new leather sofa in the living room that she was not supposed to eat near. She mentioned Preston parking in the garage because Mom said his car needs to stay clean. She mentioned dinners where the adults talked in low voices, stopping when she came downstairs for water. Damon listened without asking questions that would put his daughter in the middle. He only made pancakes, helped with her spelling list, and reminded her that grown-up problems were not her responsibility to solve. Still, details arrived on their own. A past due notice for a home improvement store credit card came to Damon's mail forwarding address because the account had once been joint. A lender called his phone asking to verify Yvette's employment for a refinancing inquiry he had not agreed to. Marion sent a short note after checking public filings connected to Vale Strategic Consulting. No conclusions yet, but the company is thinner than he presents it. Damon read that sentence twice. Thinner. It was the right word. Preston was polished from the front, hollow at the edges. At the preliminary settlement meeting, Damon wore a charcoal suit he had owned for years, pressed clean, no flashy watch, no expensive shoes meant to announce him before he spoke. Marion met him in the lobby of the Buckhead office tower, carrying a leather folder and wearing the calm expression of a woman who did not waste words in expensive buildings. Glass elevators rose behind them. The floor smelled like coffee, cologne, and polished stone. When they stepped out on 17, Damon saw the directory first. Harrow and Mills to the left. Vale Strategic Consulting to the right. 4 doors apart. He did not react. Yvette was already in the conference room when they entered, seated beside her attorney at a long oak table. Preston stood near the windows with the city behind him, one hand in his pocket, playing the role of a man who belonged near views like that. He looked Damon up and down, then smiled as if the apartment, the pickup, and the 2 bags had already decided the ending. Yvette's eyes moved over Damon's suit, searching for signs of strain. Maybe she found some. Maybe she wanted to. "I am glad we can be mature about this," she said. Damon sat across from her. Marion opened her folder. For nearly an hour, Yvette's attorney spoke in clean, confident paragraphs about fairness, lifestyle, stability, and Damon's limited earning profile. Preston said nothing, but Damon noticed the way he glanced at the attorney whenever financial disclosures came up, as if waiting for certain doors to stay closed. Damon took notes. He did not correct them yet. He let the room believe what it needed to believe. Then, near the end, Yvette leaned back slightly and said, "Damon has always been comfortable with less. I just think the settlement should reflect the life I actually built." Damon's pen stopped moving. The room went quiet for half a second, too brief for anyone else to understand its weight. Marion did not look at him. She only slid one sealed document closer to her side of the table, keeping it face down. Damon looked at Yvette, then at Preston by the window, then at the city beyond them. They thought the quiet was defeat. They had no idea it was restraint. The settlement meeting ended without an explosion, which seemed to satisfy Yvette more than it should have. Damon watched her gather her papers with the composed confidence of someone who believed silence meant surrender. Preston stepped forward to open the conference room door for her, his smile polished, his watch catching the office lights as if it had been placed there for that exact purpose. Damon saw the performance clearly now. Every gesture was arranged to make him feel outside of a world they thought they owned. He did not take the bait. Marion placed the sealed document back into her folder without opening it. In the elevator, with the mirrored walls reflecting them from every side, she looked straight ahead and said, "They are going to get louder before they get careful." Damon nodded once. "Let them." Downstairs, the lobby smelled like espresso and rain-damp wool coats. Beyond the glass doors, valet attendants moved between black sedans under the covered entrance. Damon stepped out into the afternoon and saw Yvette near the curb with Preston, her posture straight, her face lifted toward him as he spoke. Preston handed his ticket to the valet with 2 fingers, the way men did when they wanted service to look natural. A few minutes later, a silver European sedan rolled up. Damon noticed the temporary dealer plate first. Then the small rental sticker low on the windshield. Yvette did not appear to notice either one. Or maybe she had trained herself not to. Damon walked past them toward the parking deck, where his old pickup waited beneath a flickering fluorescent light. The contrast would have embarrassed some men. It did not embarrass him. A vehicle was only a tool. A man who needed a car to prove his worth usually had not built enough worth anywhere else. 2 weeks passed in careful quiet. Yvette's messages became shorter, more formal, and more certain. Preston appeared in the background of Nadia's stories more often, always described through small details a child did not understand were revealing. He talked about big projects. He took calls in the dining room. He told Yvette certain people were about to come through. He parked in the garage but never seemed to leave before noon. Damon listened, made dinner, checked homework, and gave Nadia the kind of peace adults were supposed to protect, even when they were running out of it themselves. Meanwhile, Marion worked with the discipline of someone building a case brick by brick. She requested records. She documented the transfers. She traced the consultation payment. She reviewed the clause Yvette's attorney intended to use against him and marked every place where the argument depended on Damon being exactly as underestimated as Yvette believed. Damon gave her what she asked for and nothing more. Not because he was hiding from Marion, but because timing mattered. A bridge did not fail when the first crack appeared. It failed when pressure met the crack at the wrong moment. One Thursday evening, Damon was in his apartment helping Nadia assemble a model suspension bridge from popsicle sticks and string when an envelope slid under the door. Not mailed. Hand delivered. Nadia looked up from the table. "Is that for you?" Damon wiped glue from his thumb and picked it up. Heavy cream paper. Embossed lettering. No return address on the outside, only his name written in dark ink. He opened it after Nadia went back to measuring the string. Inside was an invitation to the Atlanta Civic Builders Gala, a black-tie fundraiser honoring infrastructure, education, and community investment across the city. Damon had attended years earlier, quietly, usually through side entrances and donor breakfasts where people cared more about budgets than applause. This year, his name appeared on the formal program card tucked inside the envelope, but not in the place an ordinary guest's name would be. Before he could read further, his phone buzzed. A text from Simone Ellis appeared at the top of the screen. "I hope you received your invitation. The students from the scholarship program are being recognized that night. It would mean a lot if you came." Damon looked from Simone's message to the program card, then to Nadia's careful little bridge taking shape under the kitchen light. For the first time in weeks, the future did not feel like something he was only defending against. It felt like a room he might choose to enter. Then his eyes moved lower on the guest list, and he saw Yvette Caldwell's name printed beside Preston Vale as invited attendees under corporate partners. The night of the Atlanta Civic Builders Gala arrived with clean spring rain shining on the streets and turning the city lights into long gold reflections across the pavement. Damon stood in his apartment bedroom, buttoning a black tuxedo shirt in front of a mirror that still leaned against the wall because he had not gotten around to mounting it. The room was plain. A made bed. A dresser from a thrift store. Nadia's model bridge on the small table near the window because she had insisted he keep it until the school showcase. Nothing in the apartment announced wealth. Nothing begged to be admired. Damon preferred it that way. He adjusted his cuffs, checked the time, and thought of the night Yvette had made him leave with 2 bags in the rain. He remembered the weight of wet clothes, the sound of Preston's voice from the porch, the way the marble kitchen lights had made the divorce papers look almost ceremonial. Tonight, he felt none of that panic. Only quiet. Downstairs, a black Mercedes-Maybach S-Class waited by the curb, its paint reflecting the apartment building lights like still water. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. Damon paused for only a second before getting in. It was not the car that mattered. It was the choice to stop hiding his own scale just because someone else had chosen not to see it. At the Gala Hotel in Midtown, valet lights glowed under the entrance canopy, and men in dark suits moved through the rain holding umbrellas for women in evening gowns. The lobby had polished stone floors, tall glass arrangements, and chandeliers that made every surface seem expensive. Damon stepped out of the Maybach just as a photographer turned toward the curb. Flashlights scattered across the wet pavement. A few guests looked over. Then more. Damon heard his name from somewhere near the doors, spoken with surprise first, then recognition. "Mr. Caldwell." Simone Ellis was waiting near the entrance in an emerald satin gown, elegant without trying to make the room smaller for anyone else. When she saw him, her smile did not change into calculation. It warmed. That did something to Damon he had not expected. She walked toward him, and he offered his arm. "You clean up well," she said softly. "I had help from a very honest mirror," Damon replied. She laughed, and for a moment, the noise of the gala receded. Inside the ballroom, round tables were dressed in white linen and gold chargers. A jazz trio played near the far wall. City leaders, developers, educators, and donors moved between conversations with glasses in hand. Damon noticed the students from the scholarship program near the stage, dressed carefully, standing with proud parents who kept smoothing collars and taking photos. That steadied him more than anything. Then he saw Yvette. She stood near the corporate partners' table in a silver dress, Preston at her side in a tuxedo that looked expensive from a distance. Damon did not stop walking. He only registered the moment her eyes found him. First came confusion. Then recognition. Then the slow collapse of certainty. Her gaze moved to Simone's hand resting lightly on Damon's arm, then beyond him through the glass doors where the black Maybach waited under the canopy. Preston followed her stare, and his smile thinned. Damon could see Yvette trying to fit the scene into the version of him she had kept alive in her mind, the old pickup, the work shirts, the apartment within his range, the man she had told people was comfortable with less. The pieces would not hold. A board member approached Damon with both hands extended. "Damon, we are grateful you made it." The foundation announcement is going to mean everything to these kids. Yvette's face changed again. Foundation. Announcement. Grateful. Words she had never attached to him in public. Damon shook the man's hand, calm and professional, while Simone stood beside him like she already understood the full weight of the room without needing it explained. Across the ballroom, Yvette lifted her champagne glass but did not drink. Her fingers tightened around the stem. The master of ceremonies stepped onto the stage and adjusted the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, before dinner is served, we would like to recognize tonight's lead donor, the founder of Caldwell Infrastructure Group, whose commitment to education and community development has made this year's scholarship expansion possible. A soft wave of applause began before the name was even spoken. Damon felt the room turn toward him. He did not look at Yvette right away. He looked at the students first. Then, as the applause grew, he finally allowed his eyes to cross the ballroom. Yvette stood frozen beside Preston, the champagne glass trembling just enough for the liquid to catch the chandelier light. The applause filled the ballroom in a way Damon had not expected. It did not crash over him. It rose slowly, warmly, from the tables where students, parents, city officials, and community leaders turned in his direction. He stood because the master of ceremonies gestured for him to stand, not because he needed the room to see him. Simone's hand rested briefly against his arm, steady and quiet, then fell away so he could have the moment without anyone claiming it for him. Damon nodded once toward the stage. He could feel hundreds of eyes on him, but only one pair pulled at the edge of his attention. Yvette had not moved. The champagne glass remained in her hand, untouched, her posture too still to look natural. Preston stood beside her with his jaw set, no longer smiling, his eyes moving from Damon to the program card on the table, as if printed paper had betrayed him. When Damon sat again, the evening continued, but something had shifted. Conversations changed tone around him. People approached with respect that carried history, not surprise. A councilwoman thanked him for supporting flood mitigation research near the west side. A school principal shook his hand and spoke about students who would be able to visit engineering firms because of the foundation. A developer mentioned Caldwell Infrastructure Group with the casual familiarity of someone who had known the name for years. Damon answered each person calmly. He did not look across the room to measure Yvette's reaction. He had spent too many years being measured by her. After dinner, the scholarship students were called to the stage one by one. Damon watched a 17-year-old girl named Amani speak about designing safer roads in neighborhoods where sidewalks disappeared without warning. Her voice shook at first, then strengthened. Damon looked at Nadia's model bridge in his mind and felt something in his chest loosen. This was why he had built quietly. Not for chandeliers. Not for cars. Not for anyone who needed wealth to be loud before they believed it existed. When the program ended and guests began drifting toward the lobby, Damon stepped into a quieter hallway near the coat check. The air was cooler there, carrying the faint scent of rain from the revolving doors. He had just taken out his phone to text Nadia good night when he heard Yvette behind him. Damon. He turned slowly. She stood a few feet away, silver dress catching the hallway light, makeup perfect except for the strain around her eyes. Preston was not with her. For the first time in months, she looked at Damon without the filter of pity or irritation. She looked as if she was trying to recognize someone she had lived beside and somehow never met. "I did not know," she said. Damon held her gaze. "No," he answered. "You did not ask." Her mouth tightened. She glanced toward the ballroom, where voices and music still moved behind the doors. "You let me think you were struggling." Damon's expression did not change. "You needed me to be struggling for your story to work." The words landed softly, but he saw her feel them. She folded her arms, then unfolded them, searching for the right shape to hold herself in. "Preston told me things," she said. "About what I deserved. About what my life could be." Damon did not ask what Preston had promised. He already knew enough. Promises were easy when someone else had built the floor beneath your feet. And what did you believe? He asked. Yvette looked down. For a moment, the polished woman from the marble kitchen disappeared, and Damon saw the person who had once stood with him in a broken-down house and imagined a future before she learned to be embarrassed by the man helping build it. I believed you were holding me back, she whispered. Damon let the silence sit between them. Not to punish her. To let the truth have weight. Then he said, you did not throw me out because I had nothing, Yvette. You threw me out because you thought nothing was all I would ever be. Her eyes filled, but Damon did not move closer. Compassion did not require returning to a place that had destroyed your peace. The revolving doors opened at the end of the hall, and a breath of cool night air moved through the lobby. Simone stood near the entrance, speaking with one of the scholarship parents, her emerald gown calm against the gold light. She glanced toward Damon, not impatient, not possessive, simply present. Damon looked back at Yvette. Marion will handle the rest through the proper channels. Nadia will be protected. The finances will be corrected. The story will be told with documents, not emotions. Yvette nodded once, though he could tell she was not ready for what those documents would mean. That was no longer his burden to carry. Outside, the Maybach waited beneath the canopy, black paint shining with rain. Damon walked toward the lobby without raising his voice, without looking back to see whether Yvette followed. Simone joined him near the doors. Are you all right? She asked. Damon looked through the glass at the wet city, at the lights, at the road opening beyond the hotel entrance. I am getting there, he said. And this time, when the driver opened the door, Damon stepped into the car not as a man proving something